Hi everyone, my name's Teresa, and today I'm going to be showing you what I do as a graphic designer just for projects at school, for different commission projects, or just for things that I do just for warm-ups or just for fun. I've noticed, at least in the small town I live in and the small school I go to, the University of Mount Union in Alliance, Ohio, that not many people really know what graphic design is or what graphic designers even do. So I figured I would take that opportunity just to kind of show you a few different projects that I've worked on in the past, just to kind of help you figure out what graphic design is. So typically I use Adobe applications. Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign are typically the main three that I use. That kind of varies for everyone. So just kind of look into it. It's really easy to Google different things that artists tend to use. What I've noticed for graphic designers, at least, is that Adobe is typically the way to go. And you can look into student discounts if you're a student. I know sometimes it's a little bit on the pricier side, so if you can find any alternatives for that to create successful graphic design projects, then definitely go for it. So I guess we'll get started with InDesign. I already have it pulled up here. Typically as a graphic designer, I'll kind of give a little background on what you can do graphic design for. You can do it for pretty much anything. You can do anything that goes along with printing. You can also do anything digital, any sort of digital file, PDF, PNG, anything you can export as is what you can do graphic design for. You can even make little animations, interactive PDFs with buttons. Graphic designers can really do pretty much anything. And I know that doesn't really help a lot of people, but I'll give you a few different examples of what I typically do, being posters, stickers, different types of advertisements, or just little booklets and zines that I'll show you in the future as well. So with that, I'll start with this one right here. These are 4 different ads that I created to put up with a poster that I was using to advertise my skills around the University of Mount Union where I go for graphic design and marketing. So they're the same exact thing context-wise. All of the text is exactly the same font and the same size, information, everything like that. The only thing that's changing in these 4 are the different colors that I used. And you can kind of see here in these little squares, there's a bunch of different colors I was experimenting with until I finally found the 4 that I was most interested in using. And I typically tend to use different pages if I am creating the same thing, just one specific ad. I tend to do variants of it just to make sure that I'm completely satisfied with my end result. And I typically have a favorite out of them. Like for example, for this project, my favorite is definitely this purple one right here. I think it's the most successful. It really has good contrast in the colors, and the text really stands out from the background. You can kind of use this as a comparison. Although you can see the text on this one, it's definitely not as prominent as it is on this purple one right here. So that's my first project that I'll show you guys. It's pretty simple. There's really not too much to it. A lot of what you do as a graphic designer is really study the rules that go along with it, different types of hierarchy, using different types of techniques like using margins, columns, grids, which kind of go along with what these little lines are right here that disappeared for a minute. But a lot of that is just something you'll learn as a graphic designer. I could maybe teach you a little bit more on how to be a graphic designer in the future, but today I'm just showing you a few different projects that I've done as a graphic designer. So let's move on. This is a poster that I put up with the ads that I just showed you guys. It was supposed to be for a musical going on at the University of Mount Union this past March, but unfortunately that didn't happen, we all know, which really stinks. I was really looking forward to it, but I posted these around the university just to kind of put myself out there. I knew they didn't really have a poster yet for it, and I really wanted to just kind of show them what I could do and see if I could get a job out of it, which I ended up getting one for the Shakespeare at the Castle, which is happening hopefully this summer, if we ever get a summer, but I'll show you guys that later. But this is the poster that I used for that. And you can see just like the little ads that I had. I have 3 different variants right here, but the only real difference is that I changed the color of the background a little bit. I ended up liking the second one right here the best, but printing sometimes alters the colors a little bit, so it ended up looking a little bit darker like this one right here, just because I didn't completely alter the print settings when I decided to print them. So as you've noticed so far, I'm sure, graphic design is typically digital now, and it's a more recent career that a lot of people commonly go into now, so it's really easy to start, and especially because everything is digital now, when it used to be all just handwritten fonts, which definitely took way longer. So it's a little easier to get into, but a lot of the times you start on digital and you do print, so you do have to know a lot about color correction and how to alter things to make sure that it is going to print the way you want it to, especially when you are using color. So that's just a few things that graphic designers have to deal with, especially if they're doing any sort of posters, business cards, booklets, newspapers, anything like that. When you are formatting, you want to keep in mind the colors that you are using. Alright, so with that, we can head over to the Midsummer's Night's Dream poster. This is one that I'm currently still working on, so you can see it's still pretty unfinished. Both of my ideas are pretty drastic in comparison, and I don't quite have a third one or a fourth one yet. You can really tell that I'm just kind of messing around with the different types of composition and design that I want to achieve in the poster itself. You can see the color blocks. I'm repeating that same theme like I was in the ads. I have a few different fonts that I'm messing around with, as well as a few different colors that I kind of want to keep repeated just to give it a specific theme that I'm looking for. The customer wanted this little guy on the poster somewhere, so I'm trying to find ways to incorporate him into it and make sure that he's just not stuck on there, and he actually works with the overall composition and the flow of the poster. As a graphic designer, it's really important to consider the hierarchy of everything that you're doing. As you can see in both of these, the biggest object on there is going to be the donkey right here. So you really want to think about how this is going to move the viewer's eye to the title and then to the smaller information here so they know when to come to the show. And that's just something that you kind of have to mess around with. A lot of people start with pen and paper and just do quick thumbnails to kind of mess with composition, and other people just do it right digitally. So it kind of just depends on the artist for sure. So this is just to kind of show you what my process is, but while I'm making posters and things like that. Alright, so my last one for InDesign is a glossary I made, I want to say about a year and a half ago for a class final that I did. It is a glossary of terms in the format of a zine. If you don't know what a zine is, it's a pretty quick lookup that you can just search on Google, but it's typically just a small booklet that artists can publish themselves. They don't need a publisher to distribute them, so they can put whatever they want on it. Some are a lot simpler, like a lot of people do cookbooks and things like that, or just quick illustrations or comics, while other people talk more about politics and social different problems and things that they want to address, just because they can, because they don't need to go through anyone to be able to publish them. So there's a wide variety of zines, and if you're interested, you can definitely look them up. There's a lot of history behind them that I could go on for hours about. So we'll just stop right there and I'll show you what my zine looks like. So for this project, we were told to use a glossary of terms that we learned throughout the class, and use grid and margins and columns just to create an interesting composition overall and really mess with what we've learned. So as you can see here, there's a lot of lines on here, but when I press a key, it puts it into overprint preview, which just means that I can see it how it's going to print. So it takes away all of my guidelines, which is what all of those crazy lines were all the way around, all my margins and columns and grids and everything like that. It just takes it away so I can see what it looks like overall. So this just kind of shows you the final product, but we can go back to all those lines and you can really see my pattern here. If you look at this line right here, you can see that all of my letters are lined up to this purple line. And you can see that all of these going vertically are lined up with each other. Even the text, the body text, the captions or the titles, all of them are lined up together. So there is a pattern and a focus throughout the entire piece, but it's still a pretty uncommon composition, so it may look kind of hectic at first, but there is a method to it, which makes it a successful design. Something I always like to tell people is that success as a graphic designer has to do with repetition throughout your entire piece. Whatever it is, you want to have repetition somewhere in there for it. And I used that a few different times in this piece with the font that I used. I used the same font throughout, and it's really good to, I typically say, use the maximum of 3 fonts in a project, with the exception of a few different ones. But if you are using a lot of text, it's good to keep one font throughout the entire thing, just to make sure that there is focus somewhere. And I think I used one main font, which was a sans serif, which was a serif, my bad, which was this title up here, and the title of all the vocabulary words, and then I used a sans serif inside the body text, just so it's a little easier to read, just because it is a bit smaller. And on the colophon in the back, I also used that serif font. It even says the typefaces used are Big Calçon and Helvetica, so I did use 2 different fonts, and you can kind of see the difference there. But I only did use 2, and they are repeated multiple times throughout the entire piece, which gives it successful repetition and overall great composition, I would say. And I also repeated the images that I used. The images I found on Unsplash, which is a great place that you can use as a designer to get free or unlicensed photos. So you can just take them and the artist posts them on there, knowing that you can use them and change them in any way you'd like for any sort of projects that you're trying to do. And you can credit the artist if you'd like, but it's not mandatory. So it's a really great thing to use if you're interested. I would check it out if you would like. So yeah, and that image is, like I said, repeated throughout the entire piece. Even though it does look a little different each time, it still is using that repetition quality throughout. So I think those are all of my InDesign files. So we can move on. I'll show you a quick file in Photoshop that I used. This was for my Chicago piece. All I did was cut out the background of the original image right here, just to make sure that I could make it a PNG file which just means that the background is transparent and I could use it and change the background to whatever color I'd like. Typically, I don't use Photoshop that much. I'm not super experienced in it, but I do use it to kind of support myself in bigger designs and bigger projects that I have, especially when I'm using images. I'll use this for different photo editing projects that I need to do. So that's just a quick example. And then Adobe Illustrator is typically used for more illustration-based projects that you're doing in vector format, and I think I explained vector and raster at one point in my blogs previously, so if you're interested in that, you can feel free to check those out. But a quick explanation is that vector is a type of file or application that you can use. So whenever you create an image or a text, if you blow it up really large or you shrink it very small, it won't lose any quality. It'll stay the exact same. And it's really useful if you are doing any sort of prints or anything like that, to have a file in vector form, which is why it's great to use Illustrator for different types of illustrations. So if you're printing a postcard one day and then a giant poster or like a billboard or something, you can use the same image and just increase that file size. So it's really great and awesome to use for those cases, which is why I use them a lot for stickers that I end up selling on Redbubble, which I'll show you guys in a minute. But this is just an example of a file that I use or did use for stickers that I made for a friend, and now I'm also selling them on Redbubble. So I just figured I'd show you guys what they look like just as a finished product. They say official member of the Mickey cult. My friend is a giant fan of Disney. He also works there, and he's really into the Haunted Mansion ride and those movies, and a lot of them have this kind of pattern in the back, so I figured I'd give him a quick gift just for Christmas to remember his favorite place. So, and you can definitely see the difference between where I started, which is this first artboard right here, versus where I ended up, which are these guys right here. And you can tell there's a pretty big difference. I was definitely going for more detail at first, but I decided doing something a little more minimum and flat would be more successful just as a smaller sticker. So that's that. And then this is a quick exercise that I've just been kind of messing around with recently. The 70s style for typography and just overall design is really in right now, so I've been trying to mess around with that a little bit with just different fonts that I've found, as well as different colors that I'm trying to use. And you can see down here, it's a little bit more messy. It's definitely a smaller file size and everything like that. So this is definitely just what my progress looks like, or my process looks like as a graphic designer. It does get a little messy at some points and look kind of weird, but normally the end product is pretty successful, so it's just a process. But this is one that I finished. It's inspired by a song called Nobody by Mitski, which is this artist right down here. If you're interested, feel free to listen to her music. It's awesome, but I chose to use her song Nobody and just put it in a quick 70s font. I gave it a little shadow back there that's just a darker red, and then used like a really deep reddish brown as the background to keep it kind of monochrome, desaturated a little bit. I didn't really use too many bright colors. This red is still pretty dark, so it just looks kind of muddy like the 70s style typically was back then, especially for fashion. So I think it's pretty successful overall, but it's just a quick exercise that I was messing around with just to keep in the swing of things while I'm not doing any graphic design courses at Mount. So that's just a quick example of what I've been doing in Illustrator. Illustrator is also great because you can alter your text however you'd like. Any sort of text that you're using, or text font, family, anything like that, You can use the pen tool or just the direct selection tool to change and alter however you'd like. And there's also a bunch of different features you can use to change the texture of your fonts or anything like that. So it's a great place that I'm slowly but surely learning. So that's all that I really have to show you guys for what I've been doing recently this past year or so. But I did want to show you a quick place where some graphic designers tend to post, especially illustrators. Some graphic designers do illustrations and vice versa. So a lot of them tend to post on smaller businesses that kind of sell their work for them or do prints for them. And if not, they can sell them on places like Etsy. A lot of people even just use their social media pages to sell directly to whoever's interested. But I just recently got into Redbubble, which they distribute and print all of their products, and all of the artists just support by providing designs. And then all the artists get a percentage of the profit. So you do make a little bit of money on there. So you can create different stickers. Let's see. Let's click on this guy. This is just a quick page of all of my work. And for example, I sell a lot of different stickers like this guy, but you can also get him as different t-shirts, hoodies, tapestries, mugs, and things like that. And I can choose whatever product I want when I do post and publish these works of art. And as an artist, it's really great now that you can use different websites and applications to kind of put yourself out there further than what you used to. So if you are an artist, really take the opportunity to kind of explore that and make a little bit more money, which is always nice. But I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or comments or anything, feel free to comment on the blog post below. And I hope you learned some things. And have a great day. Thanks for watching.